Hey everyone, welcome back to Dan91's Garage. In this episode, we're going to finish making the turbo log manifold for the Toyota Starlet. It's time to get that TD04 on the engine, so without further ado, let's just jump straight into it, get this thing finished. Okay, so there we go. TD04 turbo flange, geez that's hot. TD04 turbo flange, managed to fully weld it outside. Like I said, by the time I got round into the tighter areas with the torch, the angle wasn't particularly great, but I figured if I welded as much as I could on the outside, even with the restricted access, that will help, and then obviously fully weld the inside as well. So I think that shows progress and a bit of improvement there anyway. I think I definitely felt a bit more comfortable doing it, so that's that. Ooh, hot heat sink, as it should be, I guess. And then I didn't fancy welding the inner pipe to the TD04 flange basically without a heatsink on it, but I couldn't think of anything cleverer than this. So basically I drilled a 52mm hole saw hole through the heatsink there and then bolted it back down and welded through it. The danger is that if you get a little bit overexcited with your weld, you may in fact weld all of it to the heatsink and then have to cut it out with a little cutting disc. But I figured it was worth the risk, and for the sake of like 20 minutes with the Dremel, if I did cock it up, that would have been fine. But it looks like I've got away with it. All I've done with this weld is brush it down as well. I've not cleaned anything up, so there is a little bit of wire here where I started. Yep, still hot. So I welded it in 4 sections, as you can see, just picked quarters because I couldn't get the body movement to get all the way around, obviously. Hold on to the side of it with the glove to use that as a brace. Always try and brace, don't try and freehand, just holding the torch in one hand like a hero, because you think you're going to do well and then you don't. But anyway, so yeah, on the side with the glove, and then use that to rest the torch on. And then that was quite easy to maintain, even though the internal sort of curve is a little bit tighter than the outside one. It actually felt a lot better, and to be honest with you, I think the results there definitely show improvement over some of my previous welding, so I'm more than happy with that. What you have to be careful of as well is how much it sort of burns in as well. So I had this on sort of like the minimum settings I'd want for this. It's still burnt in nicely. You could see it eroding quite nicely into the material again, because it's sort of the end of a pipe and halfway up the side of the flange. So it's basically, it's kind of like an internal, it's like an open corner joint, but in a circle sort of inside. So it's basically an open corner joint, and when you're sort of burning into the edge of material, it never takes as much as when you're burning into the side of the same thickness. So either way, happy with the settings, happy with the outcome, and if it comes off, if the heatsink comes off without me having to get the Dremel out, I will be over the moon with that. So it's fully cooled down now. There's no heat left in this at all, so there's no chance of anything shifting or warping, so we can take it off of the heat shields now. So yep, moment of truth. Did we weld it to anything, or is it just welded to the bits it should be welded to? So no. Yep, we didn't weld it, so that's the main thing. So we just give it the old warpage test. So straight edge, a ruler, and I've actually got a 0.1 feeler gauge here, so put it on the flattest side. Can't get out the side. Barely wants to go in at all, that, so I'll be honest with you, I don't think it even needs finishing flat, but I will do. But anyway, well, we'll call that a win then. So just take you up off the tripod quickly. So we'll just give it a quick check with the gasket as well. The danger is when you start welding the flange to the pipe, if you get too much penetration or you come up too high, which is why I've not quite tied in. If I'm being hypercritical, in perhaps a third of this, it's not quite fully tied in the weld to the top edge, it's just slightly below that. But the other danger was if I came up too high, I would have welded it to the heatsink, and the more penetration you get and the more it erodes into the top of this flange plate, the less well this is going to seal. So being as that pretty much clears all round, I'd say that was about as good as I could make it really. So more than happy with that. But yeah, if you get it wrong, just get yourself a sheet of copper, perhaps 2.5 mil thick, draw around this, and then have the fun of obviously cutting out all these shapes and everything, but then you'll have an entire flat layer of copper that will seal on every surface of the flange rather than just on the inner ring. But we managed to get this one right, so for all the practice I've had, I did have another go. Obviously I had a spare one with that wonky hole in it, so I gave that a go just to get the settings. The most important thing to really take away from this is, you know, trying to make settings up out of thin air and then just go, that'll do, and then trying it. You'll end up the first setting's not quite right, the second setting's a bit too much, and then before you know it, you're onto your last weld where you finally get it right, but the first 3 stitches you've done aren't particularly nice. So it's always makes good sense to practice the same type of joint you'll be doing with the same or similar thickness of material. Anyway, so far so good, enough jibber jabber. Tidy this up, linish these flat, and then we'll actually be able to put this on the car and then start doing other stuff. So yeah, well impressed. Okay, so I wanted to tap these holes and put some studs in it like they do on the original turbos. I'm going to give it a crack. If it doesn't work, I'll just drill them out anyway, but this material seemed quite hard when I drilled out these holes to the correct tapping size, but they had been laser cut, so it may well be the heat of the laser had hardened the surface on the inside of those holes. Hopefully this isn't like some ridiculous like bulletproof Hardox or something, but anyway, it's welded on now, so there we are. So obviously this is on a slight angle, so I've used the centuries old technique of close enough with the spirit level, so that's okay, that plane. It's pretty much smack on in that plane as well, so I'll just have to hold that and go for it, I think. Even if it just gets us a start, it's something. But okay, so last one. Don't go being a twat now. So in case any of you need to know, the Subaru studs are 10 by 1.25 rather than the usual 10 by 1.5. This is an Osborne second tap, obviously because we weren't tapping blind holes, so it doesn't matter how many of the later threads are ground down to help you get started. So now we've finished welding on the flange. Some of the weld sagged down a little bit and it's actually made the exit a bit smaller than it was, so I'm just going to tickle it out with the grinder basically to put it back to the same size exit it had before the welding. I'm not going to go nuts with it and pull everything out. I want to leave the weld in there for strength and sealing obviously, so it's going to get back to the size it was, so there's only a little bit to go really round here. Big shout out to Lee McAvoy for the idea of using the thin stainless steel gasket that comes free with the max speeding rod's turbo. We were talking about turbos the other day in some text messages, and yeah, he came up with the idea of bolting that on when he was going to port his out so he don't get the old crazy hands scribbling across the top of the surface. So so yeah, big shout out to him for that. So here we go. We'll start at the back edge there. So there we go, all smoothed out now. Did put a little bit of a radius on this just to help the gases flow out and fill the turbo a bit better, but yeah, whenever you put the shield on you never skip out and draw on it, and whenever you don't put the shield on you do, so either way I've got that for next time anyway. So yeah, happy with that. So we're about to sand the back of the flange flat again, so it's always a good idea to treat yourself to a new linishing belt. This was a 40 grit, but I haven't got any 40s left, but I do have a brand new 60 grit, so we'll pop that on now. This one's not too hard to change, so there we go. So we've got a definite, it's sort of, it's bowed slightly this way and it's also bowed slightly that way as well. It's not horrific, it's sort of the at worst it's sort of 0.5 millimeter with a feeler gauge around, so that's not too bad. It was flatter than that, but when I cut the notch out here to put the saddle outlet on, when I welded that back up it warped more than it had, so that's something to be aware of. The other alternative was to weld it on with that tube still intact, but then you have to spend God knows how many hours trying to chop it out from the inside here with the die grinder, and it would be very difficult to get down sort of this way into the corners. So I think you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, but if you forget or don't use a heatsink to bolt this down, you will end up with a horrific banana that you can't really come back from it's you know, it has to be done. So it's not too bad at all. So what I'm going to try and do, it's sort of worse in one area, so what I'm going to hopefully try and do is put that area on the sander and try and take away the majority of it from there only and go back evenly, rather than just dumping it on there and seeing what it takes off. But anyway, we'll mark it up with a pen, give it a waz and see what happens to it basically. So and as you can see from the pattern, it's already taken off of the high spot in the middle in this area, and not so much on the low spots. But it is gonna, basically we just need that all to be flat and even with no more high spots in it. So we'll just continue from here and see what we end up with, I think. Getting better. Again, we can see there's obviously high spots and low spots this side, so we'll try and angle it a bit more, try and get a bit more out of the middle maybe, but coming out quicker than I thought. So we're getting there now. There's only a few, you see obviously where the low spots are here, which shows sort of the old finish and some of the pen marks, but I've been all over this now with a straight edge. So like we say, the most important area is obviously around these ports. These 4 ports need to be even so they seal well with the gasket. I've measured across. This is a 0.2mm feeler gauge. Doesn't want to go anywhere. Across the ports, the only low spots we've really got are around the mounting areas, and I'm not really too worried about 0.2mm. I want to basically get this all to be one even sort of finish, and then that way we'll know that it's all the same level basically. It's actually going a lot quicker than I thought, so touch wood and everything. Always treat yourself to a brand new belt. Here we go again. Okie dokie, so it's time to fit the finish manifold. This time I'm going to go for all 6 nuts and actually torque it to the correct spec as well, because I've linished it down flat. Everything's been finish welded now, so we'll chuck it on there and see what the sort of final clearances are. It's already got the correct gasket at the back there, so we'll drop that on. I'm going to set the torque wrench to 40 Newton meters. The actual rating is 47 newtons, but mine started to feel a bit funny there last time, so we'll just do 40. There we go. 40 odd newtons. Nothing broke, nothing went ping. Turbo manifold is on. Okie doke, and here comes the turbo. Okie doke. Oh, that's a start. At least the studs are straight enough to get the turbo on. That's always a good start. This one over here is a bit awkward. You have to kind of thread it on as you're sliding it up, but there we go, that's cool. No idea what the torque spec's supposed to be on this, but I can't actually get a torque wrench on any of them anyway. So, oh hello, we've touched down. And we've touched down, and we've touched down. So there we go. We'll leave it there. It's not going to get any. It's not getting any closer distance than that anyway, so it's fine. Okie dokes. Yeah, that slips on there. We're a good 10mm clear here. The same at the back. So that's cool. And we can shorten this up as well. Take a bit off of that maybe even point it forward so the air filter comes further forward maybe. We'll have to see how it goes, but at least we know for now we can get something off and down at the least. So there we are. Happy with that. Manifold's done. Now it's time for some downpipe action, I think. But that'll all be coming up on a future episode of Dan91's Garage. Thanks for watching, guys, as always. My name's Dan, this is Dan91's Garage. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next episode.